They said only two kinds of people ever found the drum: the ones who became legends and the ones who were never seen again. Amina was about to become one of them. She just didn't know which kind yet. Her fingers were an inch from the drum. Then a voice spoke. At last, the child with the unselfish heart has come. Amina froze. Her hand hung in the air. No one stood near the drum. No one else was in the clearing at all. But 3 days earlier, she was just the girl nobody wanted. Amina's morning always started the same way: cold water on bare feet and a clay pot balanced on her head before the sun even cleared the hills. She lived in the village of Ile Omi, a place of green hills and a river so clean that children swore they could see their ancestors watching from beneath the water. Smoke rose from every rooftop by sunrise. Drums played at every festival. Under the great baobab tree in the village square, elders settled arguments that had gone on for years. It was a warm village, a proud one, but it had one shame no one liked to say out loud. No one cared for the orphan. Amina was 16. Her father had once been the best hunter in Ile Omi until the day he threw himself in front of a charging buffalo to save a group of children. Her mother followed him a few years later, taken by a fever that swept through the huts one bad season. After that, Amina belonged to no one. She lived alone at the edge of a village, in a mud hut with a roof that leaked every time it rained. Her dress was patched so many times, no one remembered its real color. Every day was the same: water, firewood, sweeping, farm work for other people paid in scraps or in nothing at all. "You're too slow," Mama Bisi snapped one blazing afternoon, watching her stagger under a heavy basket of firewood. "I've already carried enough," Amina said quietly. "And who else should carry it? Your parents." The women nearby laughed. Amina said nothing. She'd learned a long time ago that silence hurt less than fighting back. She picked the baskets back up and kept walking. The old man, who saw without eyes, one person in Ile Omi, never made her feel small. Every evening, an old blind man named Babatunde sat under the market tree. He'd lost his sight before Amina was born, but people said he saw more than anyone else in the village. "I heard your footsteps before you got here," he told her that night. "You always do. Tonight you walk heavy, like you're carrying more than firewood." She gave a tired smile. "I'm carrying my whole life, I think." He nodded slowly. "The heaviest things," he said, "are the ones no one else can see." Then he leaned in, his voice dropping low. "Have I ever told you about the drum of the ancestors?" "No." "The elders stopped speaking of it years ago. They're afraid of who might be listening." A small chill ran through her. "Why?" "Long ago, a sacred drum was hidden deep in the great forest. Not an ordinary drum. This one could speak, but only to someone with a pure heart." She almost laughed. "Drums don't talk, Baba." "Most don't." His smile faded. The ones who found it, some became legends. Others were never seen again. Before she could ask more, the village bell rang. Baba Tunde only said, "Some stories find you when the time is right." She walked home, turning his words over and over. Just a story, she told herself. She had no idea it would find her again in 3 days. Across the village, in the biggest compound Ile Omi had ever built, Chief Kondo stood over his grain store, counting sacks that were already full. He counted them twice. His barns were bursting. His wives wore coral beads, traded up from the coast. He owned more goats than anyone could name in a single breath. He was, without question, the richest man for 3 villages in every direction. And still, standing there, staring at sack after sack of grain, something in his chest itched like an insect bite he couldn't reach. The harvest is smaller than last year's, he muttered, kicking an empty basket across the yard. His advisor bowed. It's still the biggest harvest in Ile-Omi, my chief. Biggest isn't the same as enough. He didn't know the name Amina yet. In 3 days, he wouldn't be able to stop hearing it. The water runs out. The dry season hit harder that year than anyone could remember. Week after week, no rain came. The river shrank back from its banks. Then the village well turned brown, then thick and muddy. One morning, Amina watched a small boy, no older than 6, cup his hands under the well rope and drink the muddy water anyway, without a single complaint. He was already used to going without. She said nothing, but she never forgot his face. That evening, the elders gathered under the baobab, worried lines carved into every forehead. The spirits are unhappy, one elder said. We've made every sacrifice we know, said another. Still no rain. The oldest elder shook his head slowly. Maybe it isn't the spirits at all. Maybe we've simply forgotten something. No one had an answer. But nearby, sweeping the square, Amina heard every word, and Babatunde's story rose in her mind. A drum, hidden in the great forest, waiting for a pure heart. Just a story, she told herself again. But that night, for the first time, the thought refused to let her sleep. Into the forest. The next morning, Mama Bisi shoved a rope and an old cutlass into her hands. Traders come tomorrow. Gather firewood. Don't come back until your bundle is full. Amina nodded and walked toward the great forest. The wide, dark stretch of trees at the edge of the village that most people were careful never to enter too deep. Most days she gathered wood near the edge where sunlight still reached the ground. But that morning, without deciding to, her feet kept walking, past the last familiar tree, past the fallen log everyone used as a turning point. The forest grew quiet around her, too quiet. She almost turned back. Then she heard it. Boom. A single drumbeat. Soft. Far away. She froze, waited. Nothing. Maybe I imagined it, she thought, and turned to go. Boom, boom, louder now, closer. Not like any drum played at a festival, slower, deeper, like the forest itself had a heartbeat, and she just walked close enough to hear it. Every part of her screamed run, but something pulled harder than fear. She turned toward the sound. The clearing branches scratched her arms. Thorns pulled at her dress. She kept walking anyway. Then, without warning, the trees opened. In front of her stood the biggest baobab tree she had ever seen. Its trunk was so wide that 20 grown men, holding hands, couldn't have circled it. Sunlight poured down through the leaves in thick golden beams, landing on something resting between the roots. A drum, old, carved with strange symbols she'd never seen before, untouched by dust, as if it had been carved only yesterday. No drummer stood beside it, no footprints led in or out, and yet as she watched it beat again, boom, her heart pounded harder than the drum itself. She remembered Babatunde's warning, some were never seen again. Every sensible thought told her to turn and run, but the drum didn't feel dangerous. It felt like it had been waiting for her. She stepped closer, then closer again. The light around her grew brighter with every step, as if the whole forest was leaning in to watch. Her hand reached out. At last, the child with the unselfish heart has come. Amina froze. Her hand hung in the air, and for the first time in her life, it felt like the whole forest was waiting to hear what she would say next. Amina's hand still hung in the air. The drum had just spoken, and it knew her name, though she'd never told it. Who are you? She whispered. For a moment, only wind moved through the leaves. Then the voice came again, deep and slow, like it was rising up from somewhere under the ground. I have been called many names. The drum of the ancestors, the keeper of truth, the heart that speaks. A pause. But names matter little. What matters is the one who listens. Amina looked around the empty clearing. Please, show yourself. There is no body to show. The voice said, I am older than the oldest king. I've watched kingdoms rise. I've watched them turn to dust. As it spoke, the carvings on the drum began to glow. Birds, rivers, moons, stars, all lighting up in soft gold. Amina stepped back. Maybe I should go. You may, the voice said. I've never forced anyone to stay, but if you leave now, another lifetime may pass before someone worthy returns. Those words stopped her feet cold. Her whole life, people had called her a burden, useless, slow. Now something ancient, older than the village itself, was calling her worthy. She turned back. What do you want from me? I want nothing, the drum said. It's your village that needs you. The glowing symbols spread onto the roots of the tree, and the roots began to shimmer. Then, like magic, they formed pictures right there on the ground. Amina watched wide-eyed. A village, not her own, older. People danced around this very same tree. Rivers ran full, fields stretched out, green and endless. Then a king appeared in the vision, robes shining with gold. He stood before the drum and said one word, more. You already have enough, the drum answered. No, the king said, I deserve more than any king before me. He struck the drum. Nothing happened. He struck it again. Still nothing. In fury, he struck it a third time. The sky turned black. Lightning cracked overhead. The rivers turned to mud. The fields shriveled and died. People ran from their homes. The whole kingdom vanished into dust. The vision faded. Amina covered her mouth. What happened to them? The king believed power belonged to whoever had the most. The drum said. He forgot something important. What? Power belongs to whoever protects the most, not owns the most. The clearing went quiet. Many have stood where you're standing, the drum said. Most came for one of three things: gold, revenge, power. Amina shook her head. I don't want any of those. Everyone says that, the drum answered, before they're offered the chance. It let the silence sit a moment. So I'll ask you plainly, what do you want? No one had ever asked her that before, not once in 16 years. She thought about it. Then she answered, I want people to stop suffering. I want children to eat. I want clean water. I want no one to feel as alone as I have. The clearing grew brighter. The golden carvings shone like tiny suns. You've answered well, the drum said, but words are easy. Hearts are proven through action. The drum rolled slightly toward her, though no hand touched it. Strike me. Amina hesitated. What will happen if I do? What should happen? She lifted a shaking hand, touched the drum gently, then struck it, soft and quick. Boom. The sound rolled across the whole forest. Birds burst from the trees in every direction. The ground trembled under her feet. Then, nothing. Did I do something wrong? She asked, confused. The drum almost seemed to laugh. The forest has already answered you. The roots at the base of the tree began to move, slowly, gently, like giants making room for something hidden underneath. A narrow stone path appeared where there had been none a moment before. "I've never seen this before," Amina said. "No one has," the drum answered. "This path only shows itself to someone who thinks of others before herself. Follow it." "What will I find?" "The answer to your village's greatest suffering." Fear still sat in her chest, but curiosity had already won. She followed the path. The air turned cool. Flowers she had never seen bloomed along the trail. Butterflies drifted past her, unbothered, as if they already knew she meant no harm. After 20 minutes, the path stopped at the edge of a cliff. For a second, she thought she'd hit a dead end. Then she heard it, water, the hidden spring. She pushed through a wall of thick vines and stopped. Behind them was a waterfall, the most beautiful one she had ever seen. Clear water poured into a deep pool, sparkling like glass in the afternoon light. She cupped her hands and drank. It was the sweetest water she had ever tasted. Then she thought of the village well, the mud, the 6-year-old boy drinking it without complaint, the women walking for hours just to find a clean stream. Tears filled her eyes. "This can save everyone," she whispered. From somewhere in the trees, the drum's voice reached her one last time. "Now you understand. You've wasted the whole day." By the time Amina reached the village, the sun had nearly set. She had no firewood, only wet feet, and a story no one would believe. Mama Bisi stormed toward her. "Where have you been? I found something." "You found nothing. You wasted the whole day." "I found water." Villagers nearby laughed. "Water? There's always been water." "No," Amina said, "clean water, enough for everyone." That's when Chief Kondo appeared, drawn by the noise. He looked down at her with cold, unreadable eyes. "You have one chance to prove this," he said. "If you're lying, you'll work my farms for a year with no pay." Amina held his gaze. "I'm telling the truth." "We leave at dawn." The next morning, nearly 50 villagers followed Amina into the great forest. Some whispered as they walked, "She's embarrassing herself." Poor girls lost her mind. Others said nothing. They just hoped quietly that she was right. When they reached the giant baobab, the drum was gone. Only the ancient tree remained. Chief Kondo laughed. "I knew it." But before anyone could turn back, Amina spotted the stone path, still there, waiting. "Follow me," she said. The villagers hesitated. Then, one by one, they did. When they reached the waterfall, every voice in the group fell silent. Children ran straight for the water. Women dropped to their knees and cried. Old men lifted their hands to the sky. "It's real," someone whispered. "It's been here the whole time." An elder grabbed Chief Kondo's arm, grinning. "Did you see this, my chief? The girls saved us." Kondo forced a smile. "Yes, remarkable." His advisor leaned in, still catching his breath. "The whole village will be singing her name by tonight." Kondo said nothing. He watched children splash in the pool, laughing her name into the air over and over. He looked past the crowd toward the dark line of trees hiding the ancient baobab. If she found this with nothing, he thought, what could I find with everything I own? He said nothing to anyone, but by the time he walked home that evening, he had already decided he would come back alone, and this time no one would be there to stop him. That night, while the village celebrated around the new spring, a pair of unseen eyes watched from deep in the forest shadows. The glowing carvings appeared once more on the ancient drum, and a deep voice whispered into the dark. The child has passed her first test, but the greatest test begins when others discover the source of her blessing. The celebration lasted long into the night. For the first time in months, Eleomi laughed without fear. Children splashed in the new spring water. Women filled their pots and cried with relief. The elders prayed under the stars, thanking whatever force had answered them. Wherever Amina walked, people stopped what they were doing. You saved us. The ancestors walk with you, child. For the first time since her parents died, Amina felt something she had almost forgotten how to feel. She felt loved, but one man in the village wasn't celebrating at all. Inside his compound, Chief Kondo sat in the dark. A roasted goat sat untouched in front of him. His servants stood along the walls, too nervous to speak first. That girl, he finally said. No one answered. She's more respected than I am. Tonight, in my own village. His oldest advisor stepped forward carefully. It's only because of the spring, my chief. No, Kondo stood. Nobody just finds something like that. There's more hidden in that forest. I know it. The advisor hesitated, then lowered his voice. There have always been stories of an old drum, one that only speaks to a pure heart. Kondo laughed, a short, hard laugh. Old men's tales. But he didn't believe his own words. Not really. That night, once every torch but his own had burned out, Chief Kondo picked up a spear and walked out into the dark, alone, toward the great forest. Amina couldn't sleep either. Something kept pulling at her. Just before sunrise, she slipped out of her hut and walked back to the great baobab. The drum was already glowing, soft and patient, like it had been waiting. You came, it said. I couldn't stop thinking about you. The village is happy tonight. They deserve to be. The drum went quiet for a moment. Then, the first gift brought hope. The second will test something else. Character. Before Amina could ask what that meant, footsteps crashed through the bushes. She hid behind the roots just as Chief Kondo stepped into the clearing, torch raised high, eyes wide. So, he said, "You're real." He walked toward the drum like a man who already believed it belonged to him. I am Chief Kondo. I rule the richest village in this land. I own more farms and cattle than any man alive. You, he said pointing, belong to me now. The drum said nothing. I said, Kondo repeated louder, you belong to me. Still nothing. Furious, he grabbed the drum with both arms and pulled. It didn't move not an inch, as if it weighed more than the mountain behind it. He pulled harder. Sweat rolled down his face. Impossible. Finally, the drum spoke. I belong to no man. Kondo stumbled backward. It speaks. I've waited many years for someone to try exactly what you just tried. Good, Kondo said, straightening himself. Then make me richer than any king who ever lived. You asked for riches, the drum said. What have you given to deserve them? I built granaries. For yourself, I own farms, work by others while your storerooms overflow and your village goes thirsty. I feed this village only when it profits you. Each answer landed like a slap. Kondo's face twisted. I don't need a lecture from a piece of wood. He raised his spear and struck the drum with everything he had. Boom! The sound tore through the forest. Birds scattered. The ground shook. Nothing else happened. Kondo laughed, shaky but relieved. You're nothing but a drum after all. He struck it again. Boom! Dark clouds rolled overhead. Wind howled through the branches. Still, his greed didn't listen to the warning. He raised the spear a third time. Give me your power. Boom! And this time, everything changed. The forest went completely silent. Even the wind stopped moving. The carvings on the drum turned bright red. The ground split open around Kondo's feet, golden light rising from the cracks. One by one, glowing figures stepped out of the light. Old kings, farmers, hunters, mothers, children. Kondo dropped to his knees, spear falling from his hands. I didn't know. An elder ancestor stepped forward. You knew, she said. You simply never cared. Another spoke. You came seeking blessings. You never once sought wisdom. A third raised a hand toward him. The greatest poverty a man can have is a greedy heart. Please, Kondo begged, I can change. The oldest ancestor looked toward the drum. It does not punish, he said. It only reveals. As he spoke, Kondo's fine robes crumbled to dry leaves. His gold necklace turned to dust. His sandals fell apart at his feet. In seconds, he knelt in the dirt, wearing nothing but the plain clothes of an ordinary farmer. Let him earn. The ancestors said together what he once took for granted. A flash of gold light and they were gone. The forest fell quiet. Kondo looked down at his own hands, at the simple cloth now covering him, and understood exactly what he had lost. Kondo noticed someone stepping out from behind the baobab. Amina. Shame flooded his face. You saw all of it. She nodded. I mocked you, he said, voice breaking. I used people. I thought wealth made me important. I was wrong about all of it. The drum's voice returned, gentler now. Amina, one test remains, yours. You may take my power for yourself. The drum said, you could become the richest woman this land has ever known. You could rule. You could want for nothing ever again. For one brief moment, Amina let herself imagine it. A real house, enough food, no more insults, no more empty stomach. Then she thought of the boy at the well, drinking muddy water without complaint. She thought of Babatunde and his patient voice in the evenings. She thought of her parents and the village that had never once truly seen her until now. She looked at the drum and smiled. I just want my people to stop suffering. That's all I've ever wanted. The drum glowed brighter than it ever had. Light spread out across the whole forest, warm as sunrise. Then that, the drum said, is exactly what you shall have. Amina felt it before she saw it. The air turned warm and soft, like the first breath after holding it too long. She looked down and watched a dead patch of grass at her feet turn green in front of her eyes. She spun around. The trees behind her, brown and curled just minutes ago, were unfurling new leaves as she watched. Somewhere close by, a bird she hadn't heard in weeks began to sing. Not a storm, just a soft, steady fall, the kind children run outside for instead of hiding from. Amina tilted her head back and let it hit her face, and for the first time in years, she laughed out loud, alone in the forest, for no reason except that it felt good to be alive. The drum sank down between the roots one final time. My work is finished, it said, and its light faded for good. Chief Kondo kept his word. Months later, the village gathered to choose a new leader. Everyone expected a wealthy elder to be named. Instead, old Babatunda rose to his feet. "There is only one person here," he said, "who has served this village without ever asking for anything back." Every head turned toward Amina. One by one, the villagers knelt, not because she had magic, but because she had something rarer, a heart that gave without needing to be asked.
Let us dance and sing for her. She is our pride and our joy.